And welcome, everybody. Welcome. Let's talk about the word we throw around like a grenade, right? And that word is triggered. Most of us label it as, or I should say, most of us use it as a label. And when it's actually what I call a mirror. And I'm going to really get into details about that today. If you get triggered by, let's say, your kid's tone, your partner's silence, your boss's feedback, the way someone cuts you off, someone not putting away their grocery carts, right? Maybe your ex's name, or I'm never going to date anybody by the name of fill in the blank. Or maybe your mom's guilt, maybe it's your dad's guilt, maybe it's your own reflection. That moment is not proof, everyone, that you're broken. It's proof that we're human. So here's the part that's going to challenge you on this episode today on my podcast is a trigger is often, how can I say it? It's often a place where your mindset is untrained. All right. It's really where it's untrained. It's where it's also unhealed. It's unpracticed. It's unaware. Maybe you're that dude that is like literally has to watch the news, whatever it may be. And if you're untrained, and I'm going to elaborate on what I just said, that probably made no sense, but stick with me here. So again, unhealed, unpracticed, unaware. And here's the other thing too, a trigger. I live in an area where right now it's pretty much a rural area. And they built in a data center. I wasn't really aware, wasn't really into it. It's really big in this community. Like big. A lot of people were like, no, like there's people arrested. It's just a whole new thing. But however, I had to become more aware of it before I could bring my own synopsis on it. So here's what I'm saying. You're triggered because you're untrained. Your emotions start driving the car. And when your emotions start driving the car, then your purpose gets thrown in the back seat, or even further yet, in the trunk. So today I'm going to push the envelope just a little bit. All right. I'm doing this because I don't want you to just manage triggers. All right. I want you to stop letting them steal your identity. And yeah, we're going to talk about faith today. We're going to talk about science. We're going to talk about the nervous system. We're going to talk about responsibility, and we're going to talk about relationships, which is huge. And obviously the spiritual warfare behind all of these scenes. So if you're ready, stay with me because this one is going to be amazing. At the end of this episode, you're going to see your triggers differently. All right. You're going to see them differently. And also, you're also going to, besides the fact of seeing them differently, you're going to understand why they've been running your life. All right. So, for those of you that don't know who I am, my name is Michael Hicks, and welcome to Michael Hicks, the Liv2Thrive Podcast. This is a show where we don't just motivate you, we talk about transformation, mindset, identity, discipline, faith, healing, leadership, and not for the highlight reel. However, for the real life you wake up to every single Monday morning. So if you ever said the words, let me grab a drink here quick. If you ever said the words, well, that's just how I am, or that's just how it is, or it is what it is, or I'm going to say it, but I don't say it often, and I hate this word I'm about to say, I'm trying. Ugh. I have a whole new podcast. I have a whole podcast on why you should never use that word. Check it out. It's in my library. Or you keep getting triggered, or you're in the right place. Because today I'm going to talk about every single one of that. So today's episode is about triggers, what they really are, why they feel so powerful, and why you're not doomed to repeat the same emotional cycles over and over. It's that endless merry-go-round, right? Or the tires that are constantly spinning in that mud that you cannot longer get out. So before we go any further, just a few notes. This is an education and coaching conversation. It's not therapy. If you've been through deep trauma, there's no shame of getting professional support from a therapist. Therapists, what they generally do is they take the trauma from your past and they build it from the future. What I've been doing with my brand and my coaching, I take where you are now and build your future. So coaching and counseling are very much in alignment, and I like to call them teammates. They're surely not enemies. Now, let's really get into it because this is going to be a good one today. So most people think that a trigger is something outside of them. So if this is truly you, and if you're catching this over here on my live in my Facebook group, raise your hand or jot something down in the comments. I cannot see them right away, but jot them down and I'll get back to you on them. Is how most people think trigger is outside of them. Do you agree with that? Some of you think it's a person. Some of you think it's a comment. Some of you think it's a situation. I'm gonna give you the truth on what a trigger is. A trigger is nothing but an alarm. I'm gonna say that again. A trigger is nothing but an alarm, and it's not a fire. Okay? A fire is usually one of these. So let me elaborate. Unprocessed pain, unprotected boundaries, unhealed identity wounds, untrained emotional regulation, and unchallenged beliefs that you have been living like they're facts. And I'm even going to go a little bit deeper. It's the lie that you've been perpetuating to yourself, especially with these New Year's resolutions that just happened. Yeah, I called you out. And I'm going to say something really bold here. A trigger, be real clear here, it's not your enemy. A trigger is data, which I alluded to earlier already on this podcast. It's like the data center that they're building in my community, which is about 4 miles away from my house. It's your nervous system saying, ding, 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 ding. Pay attention. This connects to something. Okay. Now, I also want to be very careful here because trauma triggers are real. All right. I want to be real about that. And if you live through something maybe heavy in your life, your body can respond fast and intense. All right. And I've been there and so many things. And I'm writing my book. You'll be able to discover that in my book that I'm writing. Psychology even has a language of that kind of emotional takeover. And it's often called, and I'm going to probably do my best on pronouncing this, but it's called the amygdala hijack. She must have invented this thing, but it's called the amygdala hijack, where the emotion brain reacts before the thinking brain catches up. You see where I'm going here? That's why you never, ever want to make decisions when your emotions are out of control, right? Something happens. Oh, I got to go do this. Don't do that. All right. So I'm not saying get over all of it. I'm saying you can grow capacity. And here's what I mean. You can train your response to everything that happens. And that's what I do for a living. And I help people do this. You can stop being controlled by every single moment of your life. I see this so much. I see this in youth sports. I see this with doctors. I see this with lawyers. I see this with moms and dads, where they think being triggered causes them to feel a certain way. They don't have the mindset tools to change that. So being triggered doesn't make you weak. It says that, so staying triggered is what makes you stuck. So let me share a quick personal example for you on this. I used to get so triggered probably 10 years ago by individuals cutting me off, doing something that without a directional, just something, you know what I'm talking about, right? Because you probably witnessed this. It's because it meant that I was less important than anyone else, right? They had no respect for me. And I struggle with that immensely. So I want to give you a relatable story here. I want to use this story where I'm going to call it the strong one who's tired. Okay, the strong one who's tired. Does that sound like you? So let me tell you what triggers a lot of high responsibility people. And it's not the big dramatic stuff, it's the small stuff that feels disrespectful. I just talked about this. For example, it might be a kid rolling their eyes, right? It might be a coworker that doesn't acknowledge maybe your efforts. It might be your partner says something like, "You're always on your phone," and then you snap back at me when I ask you to get off your phone. Or maybe you just carry so much of everything, and suddenly you're not reacting to today. You're reacting to the story underneath today. Does that make sense? So you say things like, "I'm not appreciated. I'm not safe. I'm alone in all of this. I'm failing. I'm invisible." And that's why it escalates so fast. And if you're listening and thinking, "Yeah, Michael, that's me," I want you to hear this. A trigger is often where your identity is still negotiating. All right. And if you know who you are, you don't have to defend it every single time you feel threatened. All right. Some of you aren't angry. You know what you are? You're exhausted. And exhaustion turns minor moments into major wars. It's crazy on what that does. And how many of you are in like high stress environments? Like it's super high stress. Like I live in a high stress era, Michael, and my job is stressful and stress makes me trigger things louder. Well, the American Psychological Association has been trafficking stress for many, many years nationally. And some of their recent reports show that huge majorities of adults, reporting stressors and physical symptoms connected with stress. So on the global side, the World Health Organization notes depression affects hundreds of millions of people worldwide and mental health strain is widespread. So I say all that. If you feel like people are more reactive, right? Instead of reframing, more reactive, more sensitive, more on the edge, you're not imagining it. Because stress, you know what stress does? Stress shrinks patience. Stress also shortens your fuse, and stress turns feedback into attack. So, which is why this episode today really, truly matters. So, I just want to take a quick pause here and shout out today's sponsor. Can't sleep? Got the aches and pains? You got to check out the CBD oil. It is Amish tested. It's proven formula. I cannot highlight enough for all of you, if you're in your mid-age, from your 40s, even 30s for that matter, to get optimal performance in your life, you need to get quality sleep. This CBD oil that I've been using is Amish tested. It's got a proven formula. If you got aches and pains, can't sleep, it comes in a little droplet. You take 9 to 10 of these droplets and you put it underneath your tongue before you go to bed. If you want information on this, you can go to superfungummies.com. You can only purchase the CBD oil. You get 50% off by simply using the promo code New Heights, and that's all cap locks, New Heights, and you get 50% off at checkout. I want you to understand this too, that CBD oil affects people differently. Now, this is not medical advice at any means, and it's not intended to diagnose you, whether treat you, cure you, or prevent you from any disease, or if you're pregnant, nursing, or on any other type of medications, or have health concerns, talk with your healthcare professional first. All right, back at it. So let me give you the Live to Thrive lens, okay? So trigger, If you're taking notes, now's the time to do that. Trigger equals signal. Signal plus story plus spiritual pressure. All right. There's 3 layers for that Live to Thrive framework. And layer 1 is the signal. It's the body's reaction, right? So your heart spikes, it palpitates, right? The jaw tightens, your tone changes, your patient disappears. And this matters. And you know why? Because research shows that in relationships talks about the term flooding. It's a psychological state where your body becomes so activated that productive communication basically collapses, right? You're so heightened. And Gottman's work often notes this and says that when your heart rate gets too high, you cannot process things clearly. All right. Layer 2. So the first layer is the signal, which is how your body reacts. Layer 2 is the story, how your mind assigns meaning. So the story and how your mind aligns meaning or assigns meaning. That look meant disrespect, right? The eye rolling. The silence meant rejection. The feedback meant you're failing. Now, the third layer, which is the spiritual pressure, where your identity gets targeted. And when your identity gets targeted, that's the part where people don't want to talk about it. They will, though, but they really don't want to talk about it. And when you're triggered, you're really vulnerable. And vulnerable in this case is not a good thing. All right. And vulnerability is where the enemy whispers. And not always in like on a horror movie and says something like, I don't know what it would say, but they would say something like, you're never going to change. That is just who you are. Or, see, you're not healed yet. Or God's not listening and you're not alone. And here's why that matters. If I can get you to interpret every trigger as a verdict, you're going to stop growing. A trigger is a moment, and the enemy attempts to make it a sentence. Does that make sense? All right. So now I want to transition into this next part here is where I want to give a little bit of a grief trigger plus an identity piece. And some triggers are petty, some are profound, yet grief can make you reactive in ways you didn't even recognize, right? Like you can be fine until one smell, all right? Like one song, one hallway, one date on the calendar, and suddenly you're not in that present moment anymore and you're back in that pain. That's because the shedding of your old self doesn't want to let you go. And you've learned this because grief doesn't just hurt, it tests your identity. And it tests your faith, and it also tests whether you believe God is good when life is not. It is so hard for me to pray when I'm sick because all you want to do is just lay there. And I was sick with this super flu for like 2 weeks over the holidays. It sucked. Next year, I'm going to somewhere warm. Cancun, Mexico. God willing, I'm going to be there next year, especially during the holidays. The moment you're grieving, that whisper comes in, right? A loving God wouldn't allow this. What if faith is a cruel illusion? Or better yet, this is your fault, Michael, or to my audience. You'll never climb out of this. It's too deep. And if you ever heard those thoughts, keep listening to this podcast because you're not crazy. You're in a war of what I call interpretation. All right? Now, and the difference between freedom and bondage is often this simple thing. Which voice are you calling truth? So during that time when I was honestly sick with the super flu, and there are many times even in my professional coaching time frame, I had to lead when being sick. So I had to teach clients or work with my clients when I was hurting, when I was hurting significantly, and it's just keeping it human and not in a look at me perspective. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. So I want to push the envelope just a little bit here. And I'm thinking of this. So the word triggered, right? I want to be real clear to all of my listeners out there that being triggered is not a personality trait. You've made being triggered an actual identity of who you are. And that's why I'm an identity coach. All right. So I'm just triggered, you say, right? Or that's just my trauma. Or that's just the way things are. Or that's just my anxiety or my depression. Oh my goodness. Listen, I want to be very frank here. I'm not denying your history, and I'm not minimizing your pain. However, I want to challenge you. I want to challenge the idea that your pain gets to be your permanent personality. Some of us have learned how to use the triggered word, as a shield. A shield from accountability, a shield from change, a shield from hard conversations, and a shield from doing inner work to become your best self. And if you keep doing that, you know what happens to your life? Keep shrinking. You shrink. And I'm not taking away the validity of the trigger. The trigger cannot be in charge. And you let it do that so many times. You fall off one day from your new me, new year performance. And you quit. You stop going to the gym. You stop counting your macros. You stop making the change that you wanted to put in because you've allowed that trigger to make you your permanent personality. So, what if we did this? What if we put the what plus the why, and I put together a purpose for these triggers? So, let's talk about a trigger. Well, what is it? A trigger, first and foremost, is an indicator of an area in your life that is asking for more information. For me, 10 years ago, trigger, cut off, road rage. Like, I got cut off. I'm going to get this guy. I need to better him because he dissed me. I got to diss that person. So let's talk about that. That was an area of mine that was asking for attention. Okay. And why does that matter? Well, if you don't heal from it, what do? You repeat it. And what you don't confront, you project. And what you do not process, you punish other people with. Now, I remember distinctively having my little one in the car at the time and going after this guy. And then as I figured out my trigger, and the trigger was asking for my attention, it made me realize that I was playing small, that I was lesser of a man because I chose that action. It wasn't someone that I wanted my daughter to see in her eye. I wanted to be a better dad or father in her eyes. You know, as I reflect and I talk about that, I know that triggers, they expose so many things, right? Sometimes, do you often feel like sometimes you need like bumpers around your car when you're driving so some knucklehead doesn't cut you off? I'm really past that. I've outgrown that. I don't do that anymore. I've come to the conclusion now that when someone cuts me off or doesn't put their direction light on or gets in front of me, I always say to myself, they needed to be there more, or God's protecting me for this particular reason because he didn't want me to get to my destination a second or 2 minutes or 3 minutes, whatever it was later. Triggers, they expose where you need boundaries. Triggers expose where you need healing. And triggers expose where you need maturity. Oh, Michael Hicks, I needed a lot of maturity. And triggers are also where you need to forgive and let go. Unfortunately, I think of when I say that is I have someone that I have to have in my life that doesn't know how to forgive. And I still have to take the high road. It's a really hard thing to swallow, right? Where you still have to be in that world with that person and they don't know how to forgive or get past that for the sake of X. And I don't want to get too many details here because I don't think it's fair to that other person. But I want to say this though also is triggers also expose where you need truth. Like truth. Me road raging over getting cut off. The truth is you're being small. You're less capable. Yeah, they cut you off and then they flick you off. Okay. You're still good, right? Car's still intact. You're still healthy. Everybody's still good. You don't need to get up and get that one up. I have some reflection questions that I want to pull up here on my show notes, and I want to give you some awareness. And if you're taking notes, this would probably be a good time to really jot some of this down. Is jot down as you're scripting and journaling is when I get triggered, what do I feel I'm losing? That's an easy one for me. When I was getting triggered with that situation, I felt like I was losing control. Let me ask you this. For me, I also get triggered by incompetence. That's something that I have now is incompetence that I deal with, that I need to work and do a better job of other incompetencies in life, right? So the question again was, so write this down, script this down. This is going to be good for you to get rid of your triggers because it brands your awareness is when I get triggered, what do I feel I'm losing? I'll tell you this, when I get triggered by incompetence, I feel like I lose brain cells. And I'm saying that like holistically honest. And it baffles me. The next question I want you to write down is what story do I instantly believe about myself when that trigger happens? So if I'm using the word incompetent, and if I'm around someone that is incompetent, the question that I would ask myself is what story do I instantly believe about myself? Is it that I think that I'm better than them? Because if it is, I'm not. Right? Third question. What does this reaction protect me from feeling? So for me, incompetency, dealing with someone who's incompetent. Maybe it's a phone call of talking to someone for an hour about an issue with an app that I had, and the incompetence is there, and they keep pushing you on to somebody else. So the question I can ask is, what does this reaction protect me from feeling? Ooh, that's a deep one, right? What my reaction protect me from feeling? Well, I could verbally say all these mean things to someone, but that doesn't make me feel good about myself, or would it make the other person feel good about themselves? The next question: if this trigger could talk, what would it be afraid of? If this trigger could talk, what would it be afraid of? Wow. So if incompetency could talk, it would it would be afraid of someone that knows more than they do. Does that make sense? So your trigger is not just an interruption. And I want to be clear about this. It's an invitation for an alignment, a self-audit. So I want to break this piece down now as I transition in control versus capacity. People often feel the need to control their triggers. Do you feel that need? So I want to challenge you. I want to reframe that for a second. You don't need control, you need capacity. All right? And I'll get into what I mean by that. Control is very, very fragile. Capacity is resilient. Control says nothing can go wrong. Capacity says, even if it goes wrong, I can still stay me. And that's what brings me to Liv2Thrive, my coaching agency that I branded now for the last 4 years or so, is not becoming perfect, however, becoming anchored. Now, I can be emotionally honest without being emotionally hijacked, right? Does that make sense? I'm going to say that again because you should probably write this down because this is something that maybe you can put up on the wall, you see every morning. I can be emotionally honest without being emotionally hijacked. So if this episode has really been hitting you, or what I'm saying is it's really hitting you and you're realizing like I've been living in reactive mode for such a long time. Let me tell you, you don't have to do any of this alone. All right. I've got 3 ways people work with me through Liv2Thrive in my agency. So, 1, I have a low ticket workshop. You can go to any one of my Instagram handle is a big one. If you go, or you can email me at michael@liv2thrive.com. Send me the link for your low ticket workshop. It's perfect if you want clarity fast, language for what's happening, and a mindset that can reset you and that can reset you into a revisit. And it's under 60 minutes. All right. And then I have another option. It's my one-on-one coaching practice. And I only have a limited spot on this. I only got 2 more spots for this, to be fully honest with you. For people who want a personalized strategy, maybe honest accountability and a real-time support as we work through patterns that you have, identity, and discipline. And then lastly, I have a mastermind class. My mastermind class is for people who need community, who need structure, and maybe consistent reinforcement, because isolation is where triggers grow basically teeth. So you can pick the lane that matches your season. And if you're tired of repeating that same emotional chapter, it might be really, truly time to change your author. All right. So I've seen people go from, I can't help it, to, drum roll please, I can handle it. And it's not that life got easier. It's that they got stronger inside. I've watched marriages shift. And the reason why they shifted was that one person stopped escalating. I've watched parents change the temperature of their home by changing the temperature of their own nervous system. And I've watched leaders stop bleeding in their teams. And it's not perfection. It's the other P word. It's progress. And it's not denial. It's true ownership. Now, your future doesn't require new personality. It requires a new practice of identity. Now, I want to take this time and I want to land the plane. Triggers are real, y'all. They are the real deal. I'm not taking that away. And I'm not taking away of your pain from those triggers. And I'm not taking away the history, because your history does matter. It's who you are. However, your trigger is not your boss. Your feelings are very valid. However, they're not always reliable. And your life is too expensive to keep paying for unhealed reactions. So here's the question I want to leave you with today. When you get triggered, who do you become? Oh, gosh, when I got triggered, I was a slime ball. From road rage, I was a slime ball. That's who I became. When you get your trigger, who do you become? And the second part to that is, who do you want to become instead? I talked about that earlier. Is when that happens, I don't want to be that person that reacts. I'm that person that reframes, reflects. That person needs that spot more than I do. They gave me the bird because they were happy to see me. So the goal isn't to never get triggered. Life's going to happen. We're going to get triggered. The goal is to stay you when life pokes at you. And how many times does it poke at you? Well, this is Michael Hicks, the Liv2Thrive Podcast. If this episode helped you, make sure you share it with 5 of your strong friends. Or maybe they're just tired, or maybe it's a leader that's feeling overwhelmed, or the parent that's being reactive, or maybe the person who keeps saying, I'm just fine. Yet inside, they're falling apart. And remember, you don't have to win every single battle every day. Just don't surrender your identity. Until next time, my name is Michael Hicks, the host with the most. 1% better in mind, body, and soul. And always stay flexed.